Marlins take the L on opening day. Boy, oh boy, they had every opportunity to win this game, but the Marlins in 2024 start off with an L in a game which in 2023 they would have absolutely won. Warning signs for this year's club? Maybe, but some real standout performances from this Marlins group. Tons to get into. This is Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins, your daily Marlins podcast, of course. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins _UK. If you're listening to the pod, of course, hit subscribe and leave a review. This is your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. We're here for you every day, guys, as you know. And we are here to talk about real baseball, a real game, a game that was fun, very fun. Tough L for the Marlins, too. Tons to get into in just one single game. The good news is, guys, there's 161 more games. 160 more one of these. It could be a wild, wild season. There is a YouTube channel as well, guys, so make sure you head on over there, hit subscribe. Join me in the comments there as well on the YouTube channel. If you are watching, you have the graphics package to help you with the rundown. There's a lot of highlights, I think, from yesterday. One of the big talking points with Avisail Garcia. He was pinch hitting in some big spots. Didn't come through equally. There was some pregame stuff around Avisail Garcia too. Declan Cronin announced himself. Declan Cronin had the ladies moaning at the back end of that. Actually, it wasn't just the ladies. It was everyone. Everyone was moaning in a good way. Luis Arias, slow start for him. Berger, Bell, Jazz. Nice starts for them guys. So mixed day, tons to get into in just a single episode covering a single game. Pirates were fun too. They played their part. So, how are you feeling after that first Marlins game? What's your reaction? Where are you on the kind of temperature scale at this point? For me, my main summaries or takeaways were that firstly, the atmosphere was pumped. The atmosphere was great. The rally towels and that idea, handing them out and getting the rally towels going, top idea. More of them, please. Whether they should be black, someone I think mentioned that on Twitter as well. I think that's a fair call. Like, they could have a more standout color. So more rally towels, maybe tweak the color scheme a touch so they can be a touch more visible and would look like could you imagine the teal towels getting twizzled? Like, that would be pretty exceptional. Doesn't just have to be teal. They can go whatever color they want, but black, not sure that was the one. Nevertheless, atmosphere pumped. Attendance, good attendance. I think it was the biggest since 2016 for opening day. So big numbers. And it felt like it was big numbers of Marlins fans too, by the way. Saw some Pirates shirts, etc., but it wasn't like other years where like there was a clear contingent of the away fans and, they were pumping the numbers. Like, this felt like Marlins fans. So the atmosphere was really encouraging, and the ballpark atmosphere encouraging. What I would say was, and obviously I was just watching from home. I had the volume cranked, but I couldn't really get the sense of any major musical instruments that were being boomed out or whatever. So it may be that like the Bally broadcast guys just kind of cranked down the fan noise in a way. Or maybe just people didn't turn up with instruments. I don't know. So I'd be interested if you went to the game. Let me know your experience and your view on the atmosphere, the rally towels, and as well, like, one of the big things was this musical instruments situation. Did anyone bring them to the game? Did they add anything, or were they just a mild annoyance? I don't know. Either way, atmosphere nailed on, and more of the same. I hope like this year the Marlins find a way to get the fans engaged more regularly, some big numbers, and create those atmospheres. It's more likely to be obviously on those big weekend series, etc. Like obviously like through midweek and the working days and everything. Like, it's tough. It's tough to make that happen, but yesterday was a work day. It was a Thursday, and people managed to make it happen. So congrats to the Marlins on that. They put everything into that marketing campaign in trying to get them there. They even had Neymar throwing out the first pitch, which I don't think they really fully published. Like, it feels like Neymar's a big draw. And like, first I'd heard of that was a couple of hours before with maybe Kevin Barral mentioning it. So yeah, that was, another nice piece. Let's talk about the lineup itself. So before we get to the game itself, the lineup and what we then see and what the indication are from that. So the main standouts, I would say, is Brian De La Cruz DHing, Nick Gordon in left field. All offseason, that's been my sense, is Nick Gordon's going to play a ton in left field, particularly against right-handed pitching. So Gordon in left field, De La Cruz DHing. It makes a ton of sense. Jesus Sanchez is pretty decent in right field. Jazz obviously is in center field. And for me, Nick Gordon, the natural fit in left field. So that means De La Cruz, more often than not, probably DHing. With John Birdie being moved, Berger's going to be a ton at third base. Bell, a ton at first base. They'll mix days in and off and whatever it might be. We'll see what that looks like as we get going here. But, for me, no Avisail Garcia. No surprise. I think Avi will be basically short side platooning with Jesus Sanchez. A bit more about that later on. But Gordon in at left field, no Avi, and De La Cruz DHing. They're the main takeaways. They're the main standouts. The people, like where they hit in the lineup, all this kind of stuff will be fluid. It's always kind of fluid with Skip. But I feel like that starting group from yesterday feels like the starting group for the majority of times without any injuries, obviously. That's who the Marlins will have out there against right-handed pitching. Against lefties, it's going to be different. Jesus Sanchez will not be allowed to hit against any lefties. Avisail Garcia will start against lefties. I'm convinced of it. And that's the right play. It's the right play for sure. Jazz, I think, will be hitting against lefties. He'll just hit lower down in the order. Nick Gordon may also not hit against lefties as well. You then may also get De La Cruz playing in left field then for when lefties are going. So you may end up with an outfield of De La Cruz, Jazz, and Avisail Garcia when lefties are going against the Marlins. So that's the starting point there. The guys that made the roster itself, obviously we had Vidal Brujan on the bench. Jonah Bride ended up making the roster. So Brujan, Bride, Avisail Garcia, and Bethancourt, that was the bench yesterday. And what I'd say is that, man, it's raining heavy here. Oh, boy. What I'd say is it feels like a weak bench. It feels like it lacks, it lacks people that you would trust. And fast forward or rewind to yesterday's game, I think that played out. I think that's what we saw with, you're asking a lot for Jonah Bride to rock in. You're asking a lot for Avisail Garcia. He had some big at-bats and fundamentally couldn't deliver. And from what we've seen with Avisail Garcia, if he wasn't paid the money, he wouldn't be on the roster. So you're asking a lot. Jonah Bride, he's not performed at any degree at the big league level. So you're asking a lot. Vidal Brujan, the same. All of these guys are, to their careers thus far in recent years, let's kind of talk about Avisail Garcia in that perspective, that these guys are way below average major league sticks. And for me, this is a problem for the Fish. They're going to need to mix and match guys and people are going to need to start, etc. But we saw it yesterday. The bench options were weak. The Pirates, they got a couple of guys off their bench and they looked lively. One of them hitting a home run as well. So, that's it. That was probably a difference maker there. Sawinski obviously came off the bench. It wasn't Sawinski who hit the home run, though, was it? It was Oliveras, I think it was. A nice home run, actually, against Nardi. Considering Nardi had put the fire out, the bases were juiced, thinking this game could get out of hand. Nardi puts the fire out, and then with no runners on, gives up the solo shot. So, could have been worse, obviously, with that one. But that was my first thing on the offensive side. I loved how they lined up. I love that Brian De La Cruz is out of the outfield and is DHing. What I would also say is Jake Burger, a lot of talk about him at third base. When Jake Burger came and joined the Marlins, for me, the scouting report was, guy's not that great at third. For the Marlins, when I watched him every day, looked fine. Yesterday, more than fine. Jake Burger is completely fine at third base. If you hit the ball to him or near him, he's got a good glove and he's got a strong arm. And really, at third base, that's really all you need. Are there better third basemen? Are there more athletic guys? Probably. But can Jake Burger play third base? He absolutely can. And are you going to get a major uplift if you have someone else in there? I don't think so. And obviously, Burger with the stick, we saw a stick yesterday. He had a slow spring. But Burger, 3 hits for him yesterday, 3 RBIs. So, really nice start for Jake Burger as well. So let's hit the ad and then want to carry on and really get into the game itself and talk about the key takeaways from the game, the action we saw. The Marlins were leading by 3. The Pirates clawed it back. They found it, got away into extras. The Marlins had chances. The Pirates had chances. In the end, the Pirates ended up taking the win. So plenty more to get into. This episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Yes, sir. The FanDuel guys in there. All right, so you can say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. All right, guys, back here with me, Peter Pratt. Friday, the 29th of March. It is the day after opening day. We're reflecting on the Marlins taking a very entertaining L, I would say. I think the crowd enjoyed the game generally. The outcome wasn't what we were hoping for, but I must say the game itself was very fun. The product on the field was fun and entertaining. And the Marlins lineup was fun. Let's start there. Actually, no. Let's start with the pitching, and let's start with Jesus Luzardo. He got the ball opening day, and for me, Jesus Luzardo, 5 innings of work. He ends up going, how many pitches was Jesus Luzardo? He was 85 pitches. Perfect number, 5 innings, 85 pitches. That's the mark. Like, start one. Guys aren't going into 90s, 100s pitches, etc., etc. Like, this is the baseline here. And early in, this first, second inning, I could see that Luzardo at this point, it was pretty certain it wasn't going to be anything more than 5 innings. What we did see in those 5 innings was 8 Ks for Luzardo. I wouldn't say it was his ultra sharpest, which you're kind of not going to expect, first game, opening day, bit of nerves, etc. But for me, Luzardo, proved that he is an ace and he can absolutely carry this rotation with Sandy not being there. 8 Ks, he gave up a 2-run shot to Brian Reynolds. Boy, oh boy, Brian Reynolds absolutely demolished one. It was an absolute no-doubter from Reynolds. Other than that, frankly, Luzardo was on his game, and he was aggressive. He was looking for the strikeouts. He was hunting strikeouts, and we saw that. So really encouraging start for Jesus Luzardo. He's going to be so critical for this Marlins rotation because he's the one in the current rotation anyway that you can trust. With you, there's any degree of confidence, it's for Jesus Luzardo. And that's why he gets the ball opening day. Like, he is the de facto ace at this point. He is the ace with Sandy not around. But with so many question marks and upside, by the way. There's question marks and upside with the other guys in the rotation. But for Luzardo, the Marlins just need solid, consistent performance. And that's what we got in opening day. Luzardo left the game, 5 innings. The Marlins were leading. You were feeling, pretty good, to be honest with you, at that point. Let's talk about the offense, and then I want to get into the bullpen and how things played out a bit later on in the show. So offensively, like I mentioned, I'm very happy with the guys that were selected. And really, when we piece this together, this can be a fun group, no doubt about it. Arias, Bell, De La Cruz, Jazz, Berger, Jesus Sanchez, Tim Anderson, Nick Gordon, and the catcher. Like, that's a fun group that on any given day, can have a standout performance. Yesterday, the standout performer being Jake Berger, as I mentioned. But, for me, Jazz early was really dazzling. He got the walk early on. He ended up with 2 walks, Jazz. He laced a double. Everything was hard hit. He was quality on the bases. He got from first to third. And then equally, second time around, he ended up scoring from second, putting the gas down. So Jazz was just, everything was going through Jazz. Like, he is the heartbeat. I mean, he was in the cleanup spot, and Jazz really dazzled early on. So really encouraging start for Jazz. He does it all. And particularly if he can add a couple of walks to his game, like we saw, 2 walks yesterday, it's encouraging. So, Jazz was the standout as well as Berger. Berger just, runners on in front of, that's why I like Berger in the 5-6 spot, right? Really, you get guys on in front of Berger. He's got this swing where the bat plane is really level and in the hitting zone, it seems, for a long time. Like, when I see Berger swing the bat, it feels like the bat is in like the optimal spot for longer than anyone. It's just the swing path is optimal. And so it's no surprise that Berger makes a ton of contact. Really impressive. Really, really impressive. And like I mentioned with Berger, at third base, like, okay, he's maybe not Nolan Arenado or, Brian Hayes or whatever, but he's absolutely serviceable at third base. Like, load of hard hit balls to Jake Berger yesterday. No, his glove work was exceptional. His arm, exceptional. And at third base, that's what you're looking for. So really encouraging. In the leadoff spot yesterday, Luis Arias, he had an 0-for-6 game. Luis Arias, I think that was his worst ever performance, 0-for-6. He struck out in his first at-bat, which was shocking enough. And then to go 0-for-6, man, oh man, that is very un-Arias-like. What I would say is, on that topic, expect a huge bounce back from Arias today. I'd expect him to have probably a 4-hit game or something crazy. So, did talk about it that, if the Marlins the offense is gonna improve, then you need the guys to stay at a level. Arias can't take a step back. I don't think he will. I absolutely don't think he will. But an 0-for-6 game, boy, oh boy, that was a shocker. It's probably the most shocking stat there was, to be honest with you. Bell equally was impressive yesterday. De La Cruz, he grounded the double play first up, and, that got everyone excited on Marlins Twitter. The double play is already in effect after the first inning. So, Tim Anderson, though, with his first knock for the Marlins as well, first RBI. It was a big knock at the time, big RBI. Great to see. It felt like at shortstop yesterday with Tim Anderson, he didn't have a ton of work. It felt to me, I don't know about you guys, and there's probably ways to look this up, but it felt like a quiet, considering it went to extras too, it felt like quite a quiet day at shortstop for him. But what we did see looked completely fine. The throws, his arm looked completely fine. So that was encouraging. The stick looks encouraging. I like Tim Anderson hitting down the order like that. Again, this group, this starting group, offensive group, I'm all in on. I like this group. I think it's a fun group. I've got serious questions, though, around the bench and the ability to impact the game positively from the bench. And equally, if this starting crew, if there's anyone that's dinged up, then it looks pretty thin to me. Like, I know there's guys sitting down at AAA, but there's a lot of question marks around those guys too, to be honest with you. I know everyone's like excited about Dane Myers. I'm excited about Dane Myers. I actually think there's definitely an above average hitter in Dane Myers' profile, but we have to acknowledge that at this point it's all unknown and it's all upside. So you just don't know what you're going to get there. Let's talk about Avisail Garcia, because Avi came into the game pinch hitting for Jesus Sanchez. The Pirates brought in a lefty, Jesus Sanchez. I'm completely for this situation. Avisail Garcia, it was right to pinch hit for Jesus Sanchez at that point. I'm completely with that. The at-bat then itself, I mean, listen, this lefty, it was impressive. He pitched well yesterday. Avi struck out on 4 pitches. 3 of them in a row were out of the zone strikes where he was swinging. So it wasn't that encouraging, it's fair to say. Avisail Garcia then had a second at-bat. Later into the game, he actually had an opportunity to walk it off for the Marlins. Unfortunately, a ground ball and an out at that point. So the game was on the line. Avi had the opportunity. Couldn't make it pay. Avisail Garcia, by all accounts, was booed at the start of the game. So when on opening day, you're doing the team announcements and the anthems, Avisail Garcia booed by the Marlins fans. Noah Berger not happy with that situation. He isn't happy that Avi is being booed. Frankly, the Marlins fans can do whatever they want, and I completely understand where Noah's coming from with his thoughts that we shouldn't be booing Avi on opening day as his name's being read out. I understand Noah's point of view. It's fair to say that probably most people don't agree with that. The reality is the fans can do whatever they want. And they, at this point, like me, like the rest of the fans, like all of us, Avisail Garcia does not deserve to be on this roster by his productivity and his production. He doesn't. That's why Marlins fans are booing. They're not really booing Avi specifically. Well, they are, but the reason he's being booed is he shouldn't be on the roster. And the Marlins, for whatever reason, continue to carry him on the roster. Other guys aren't getting the opportunity. Like we heard this from Peter Bendix the other day. We've moved Birdie, and it creates opportunities for others and guys that we like. Like with Avi, we've seen what we've seen, and it's time to move on so we can see and give opportunities elsewhere. They kind of can't have it both ways, but they can have it both ways. Anyway, it was just one game and 2 at-bats. And so we'll wait to see if Avi can rediscover anything this year. But he was booed to start the year before he's even taken an at-bat. He then had 2 very discouraging at-bats where he struck out pretty easily. And then with an opportunity to win the game for the Marlins, wouldn't that have been wild? Avi ends up grounding to third base and records an out. Standard. So we'll wait to see. I think there might be a lefty going for the Pirates tonight. Let's see who is going. Perez is going. So we've got a lefty going. So it's a good chance that Avi may be starting. He should be starting tonight, probably for Jesus Sanchez. So let's see if Avi can get things rolling this evening. I, by the way, am not against Avi being booed. I'm not against the fans booing him at all. His production has not warranted anything else. Silence. Okay, maybe silence would have been the right approach. But really, Avisail Garcia's tenure with the Marlins has been so poor. And to that point, like the fans just want to see, they want to see the players on the roster that deserve to be there to give the team the best chance to win. Avisail Garcia isn't on the roster due to his production, his performance, his work ethic, any of that. And frankly, he is hindering the Marlins. And we saw that yesterday. He hindered the Marlins. So, hey-ho, that's enough about Avi. Let's talk about this bullpen because yesterday, Jesus Luzardo left the game. 3-run lead for this Marlins bullpen. Let's go back to 2023. Said this multiple times through this offseason. I think I said it on the Fish on First stream last night. The reason the 2023 club performed the way it did was primarily the rotation held up and was healthy in the main. They made it work. Braxton emerged. Luzardo had a great campaign. Yuri emerged, etc., etc. Sandy took a bit of a step back and then got hurt at the back end, but overall rotation fine. This club was dominated by its bullpen. The bullpen found its groove early, and it dominated the scene. AJ Puck, reminder, he was in the pen. He was the closer. Puck, Nardi, Scott, all them guys were really standing up and delivering, as well as a few others, actually, through the season. They had a historic 1-run win record and pace. They had, I think, the best ever start to a campaign in terms of 1-run wins. It was a historical bullpen. As I looked at the bullpen headed into this year, it's fair to say, in my sense, is that this group is not as strong. And there's volatility in there. I think there's always volatility. But my sense is this group isn't as strong as it was last year. It could be, and maybe as things progress, it could be. But Anthony Bender hasn't pitched for 18 months at the big league level. Sixto hasn't pitched for 3.5 years at the big league level. We've got a guy called Birch Smith in the bullpen that has never looked like a big league pitcher, to be honest with you. And you've then got Nardi and Tanner Scott that are the obvious leverage guys, and then a couple of long men. So for me, I'm looking at the bullpen. I don't think right now this is currently an area of strength for the Marlins. I think they're they're in a situation where they're just going to have to see how it goes and hope that Sixto, Bender, they remain healthy, etc. So yesterday, for those that listen to this show regularly, most people listen to this, I was high on George Soriano because of his performance last year, through spring as well, and I think that George Soriano could well end up getting some save opportunities for the Marlins the later the year goes on. It's fair to say George Soriano did not have his best game yesterday. He ended up with just getting a single out, gave up 2 hits and a walk. He loaded the bases. Andrew Nardi was required to come in and clean up the mess, and he did. Fair play to Nardi. Unfortunately for Nardi, then, when the bases were unjuiced, he gave up a bomb on that one. So not optimal there for Nardi. Actually, that was a 2-run shot against Nardi. Anthony Bender came in as well, and Bender looked okay. Like, Bender was getting squeezed by the ump, by the way. Like, it was a tough, he was definitely struggling. The umpire was being really tight, I think, on Bender. So he was, it was a lot of pressure on him there. But Bender is good to see him back. Sixto then came into the game. The Marlins have a 1-run lead at this point. A lot of pressure on Sixto. And the really interesting thing is the way that things have played out with Soriano loading the bases, it felt like, and with O'Neill Cruz due up, Skip Schumacher made the right call. He made the right call at that moment. Bases juiced, O'Neill Cruz, bring in Andrew Nardi. You need the lefty against O'Neill Cruz, and the bases were juiced. It was the perfect call. It worked perfectly. They tried to get a few more outs out of Nardi, and that didn't work. So they tried to get him into the next inning. Unfortunately, that backfired a touch. But overall, that was the right call. However, as this was happening, and then Bender's in, I was looking at going, man, I was thinking Sixto might be kind of eased in, a low leverage situation, but no, Sixto, I could see he was like, in advance of this, he had his hoodie off. It was clear Sixto was coming into this game. And the fact was, this was a close game. The Marlins were leading by 3. They were pegged back. It was a close game, and I could see, I was thinking, Sixto's going to get the 8th inning here, which, a lot of pressure for Sixto. And who does he face? The hottest hitter in spring, O'Neill Cruz. What does O'Neill Cruz do? He hits one opposite field. For me, it looked like a bit of a miss hit, to be honest with you, but it disappeared, which just kind of is testimony to O'Neill Cruz's power. But yeah, Sixto Sanchez, unfortunately, second pitch, hit opposite field for a home run, game tied. Fair play to Sixto, though. He buckled, he knuckled down there and got the next 3 outs, got out of the inning. And then it's just we're into, you're into game-winning mode. Who can come up with a clutch hit in the right spot at the right time? You get into extras. They end up going in 12 innings, and they've still got the place runner. So you had 3 opportunities with the place runner. The Marlins couldn't do anything in any of those innings. They couldn't put up any runs in the 10th, 11th, or 12th inning with the placed runner, which is extremely below par. And that kind of speaks to it. Goes back to the point I made about the offense. They couldn't get the clutch hits, and unfortunately, there were no sticks to come off the bench that you were confident in. There was no John Birdie to walk off the bench. There was no Garrett Cooper to walk off the bench. None of these guys. You've basically got some defensive replacements on the bench. No sticks. It's going to be a problem for the Fish. It is. They're going to play a lot of close games, and we saw that. 3 opportunities with the place runner, couldn't score a run. Pretty disappointing. But for me, extra innings was dominated by Declan Cronin. He was absolutely phenomenal in his Marlins debut. And for me, Cronin, he had everyone moaning, including me, no doubt, in a positive sense. Cronin, he's got those ladies moaning. Is that a ripoff from Steamin' Willie Beeman from Any Given Sunday? I think it is. Anyway, I'm gonna roll with that for now. Anyway, Cronin was absolutely immense. He ends up obviously giving up 1 run in this 3rd inning of work. The interesting thing about Declan Cronin here, I know Brian Hoeing wasn't used or Birch Smith. So maybe, the Marlins may not have to do this, but after 3 innings of work out of the pen, could Declan Cronin take the L, which he did get the L, and could he end up being optioned today? Do the Marlins need to option Cronin and get another arm into the pen? It's possible, considering just the sheer usage that was used. Like everyone was used apart from Hoeing and Birch. So they may need to. Puck's not going to be going, no one's going to be going past 5. This is the point. Like the starters, they're all going to be going like 80 odd pitches, 5 innings. So all of this first time through the rotation, second time as well, maybe, like they're going to be managed. No one's going to be given the full 110 pitch extravaganza. So nevertheless, Cronin for me, a real standout. And the Marlins look like they might have found something there, which will be really impressive. And they need to. Overall, it was not the best day for the pen. Soriano, the first reliever used, discouraging outing. Andrew Nardi did his thing. When the pressure was on, he really delivered. Tanner Scott, a couple of walks to get going for Tanner Scott. We're like, oh man, it's 2022 Tanner again. Then he kind of knuckles down and gets a few Ks and gets out of it. So Sixto, great to see him back. Tough matchup again. I mean, pretty much your first hitter you face in 3.5 years is O'Neal Cruz, who's been absolutely on fire in spring. It is the worst. Like they probably should have just walked him, to be honest, but they didn't, and the rest is history. But that was a blown save. It's down as a blowy for Sixto Sanchez, unfortunately for him. So overall, what a fun game. I mean, look at that. That's 30 minutes of chaos that I've tried to cover there. It was a fun game. Luzardo showed out. I think the offense showed out early. It then, later into the game, when they needed to rely on the bench and some pinch hitting, for me, there's an early red flag there around the quality of the sticks that the Marlins have the ability to use off the bench. I also think the bullpen, this is a game in 2023 that the Marlins would have won. And this is, you look at it and you look at the start and you go, okay, the Marlins now, look at how they started 23 and look how they've started 24. They've already lost their first one-run game. And frankly, the Marlins should have won this game. It was there for them to win. They were in the perfect position to win it. They had multiple opportunities in extra innings. They couldn't do it. It's a disappointing L. It really is. But it's the first game. There's no need to panic. But for me, a few obvious trends emerged early. And the offensive group looks fun. Avisail Garcia looks and remains a lost cause. How short is the leash going to be for Avisail Garcia? Jesus Luzardo looks like an ace and someone the Marlins can absolutely depend on. The bullpen looks a work in progress. It has upside, but equally, there's a lot of rust in that pen. And so in the heat of battle here, in the pressure, and there's going to be a lot of pressure, I have my concerns whether the pen is going to be as good as 2023. I think this group's going to take a step back. And fundamentally, that's going to be the difference maker here for this club. Going from a over 500 club, if the pen takes a step back in any degree of significance, which I think it will, then there's a good chance the Marlins will too. Nevertheless, I'm not panicking, and I'm also having fun. I really enjoyed that game last night. It was fun, it was exciting, and Lone Depot was pumping. Guys, thanks for joining me on Locked On Marlins. I'll be back next week. There'll be no weekend episode for me. It is the Easter holidays, and I've got a full house here celebrating Easter. So no episode for me unless there's any major breaking news where an episode must be delivered, then I will find a slot. But if there isn't, and the Marlins just go on and win a couple of games casually, no episode from me. Appreciate making Locked On Marlins your first listen, guys. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. And we're into the thick of the season already, guys. So one game down, 1-6-1 to go. See you guys next week.